Hello, this is Reid. I'm president of Real Assets here at Westwood in Houston. I want to welcome you to our February update call for the energy infrastructure team. Basically, February was a strong month. We look at the energy infrastructure indices are up about 1.7% for the midstream indices, and the MLP index actually was continuing its strength up 3.4%, bringing the year-to-date performance to 12.5% for MLPs and 4.5 to 5% for the broader midstream indices that contain C corps. In terms of other energy, it was kind of a mixed bag. XLE, which is really dominated by Chevron and Exxon, was up 3.8%, but the other energy indices, XOP and OIH, were down 2.5 to 4%. So it does look like a correction process started within energy during the month of February, which, as you all know, has continued here in March. From a commodity standpoint, crude oil did turn down 3.8% in February, and that's about where it finished the year, down about 2.7%. But natural gas was up 26%. So it really is kind of the tale of two commodities here on very much different paths. In terms of stock performance for February, the C Corp average was 2.3%, which is a good number. But looking beneath the details, it's really quite a big divergence of returns. Solaris was up 25%, along with Eris 23%, while Venture Global, the newest IPO in the space, was down a whopping 26% in February. The MLP average was actually a little bit more skewed to the positive side. Genesis up 22%, and CQP up about 11.8%. And the only real laggard for February is Energy Transfer, which was up about 60% last year, and it's been kind of slower to perform this year. The Canadian averages were up 1.8%, led by Sobo, which was a spinoff from TRP last year, up 10.7%, and then Pembina, which is PPL, was up 7.2%. On the negative side, Gibson, which is GEI, was down 12.3%, mainly because of a weak earnings report in the fourth quarter. On a year-to-date basis, the average C Corp was up 7%, which is actually an excellent showing, driven by Eris up 31% and Plains up 19.6%, and SCI was up 18.7%. The most notable laggard is Venture Global, which came public at $25 and was down almost 40% in the first 2 months. So obviously a very disappointing IPO, mainly because they priced it too high. On the MLP average side, CQP, which is a Cheniere company, up 29%, along with Genesis up 29%, while Energy Transfer was the lowest return, but still positive, up 0.1%. On the Canadian side, Sobo was up 13.5%, while Gibson was down 12%. So obviously quite a lot more divergence here year to date than we saw last year, when most stocks were up pretty significantly. Moving on to President Trump's recent executive orders, we've all been, I think, kind of surprised by how many actions he's taken across the board. On the energy side, it's basically been a story of trying to unleash American energy, declaring a national energy emergency, and doing everything he can to boost LNG export expansion by removing some of the bottlenecks. On the negative side, he's been pretty disruptive in terms of trying to negotiate peace treaties around the world, and some of our allies are trying to scratch their head. And so at the end of the day, it looks like the markets overall are trying to figure out what all this means for the stock market overall and the energy market. And I think we're all fairly concerned about the impact of tariffs that are weighing on the market right now. In terms of some of the caveats, a lot of the actions that he's talking about will probably never come to pass or could be litigated. So while he has a lot of ideas, a lot of these things may never play out the way he intends them to. And in terms of the midstream sector, which is our focus today, if he is successful at getting production to grow, that will benefit the midstream companies with higher volumes. And overall, we think the midstream space is really the best and safest way to play the energy market because of its pipeline, fee-based type of nature. Then wrapping up, we just completed fourth quarter earnings. On average, it was a very good quarter. They were in line, but there were some meaningful beats and misses. I'll talk about the top three on each side real quick here. Genesis was a big surprise, great quarter, up 15%. and then announced a large sale of their soda ash business, which significantly improves their balance sheet. And that was a big surprise for the market. I think the stock's up now 30% year to date. Pembina also had a very good quarter. Stock had been languishing. It's up nicely year to date and on the back of a strong earnings beat, along with Key, which is another Canadian company. On the negative side, Gibson, another Canadian company, actually had a bad quarter and lagged behind some of their projections for growing an acquisition they made last year. The stock is down and the earnings were down about 14%. And then Kinetic, a very strong performer last year, kind of struggled in the fourth quarter. Had some misses on different business units, and the stock has trailed off, and their EPS was down about 9.5%. And then lastly, kind of the big topic we've been talking about for 3 quarters now, I think, is AI data center growth. The market overall would frankly like to hear more announcements. So in some cases, there have been some very specific projects. Namely, Williams announced on March 3rd they signed a 10-year contract for a $1.6 billion project tied to a data center, which is very good news. In some cases, CapEx was creeping higher, and the stocks were disappointed, or the investors were disappointed, because there wasn't enough specific commentary about project announcements. I think that will be forthcoming. In the meantime, what we're seeing is CapEx is moderately higher with all the excitement about AI data center growth, as the companies are ramping up their businesses to take advantage of that growth. And we're in a period where the market has to be patient and wait for these contract announcements to be announced by the companies, probably in the quarters ahead on earnings calls. That is our update for February. Thank you so much for joining today. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out to your Westwood advisor to follow up with any specific questions or comments that you have. Thank you and have a great day.